The palace was quiet, as if holding its breath. Golden lights flickered softly along the tall marble walls, reflecting on the polished floors. Outside, the night sky was full of stars, but inside the air was tense. The queen sat in her grand chair, her eyes sharp and observant, her hands resting lightly on the armrests. She had ruled this kingdom for decades, her decisions always wise and precise. She had trained her daughter, Princess Lyra, to be strong, graceful, and careful, but tonight something felt different. Lyra walked into the hall with a calm but radiant smile. She was beautiful in the way that made people notice her, not just for her royal clothes or her crown, but for her presence. Her long hair shimmered like the night sky. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that few could match. Yet it was not her appearance that drew attention tonight. It was the man beside her. He was ordinary. His clothes were simple, almost plain, and his hair was messy, as if he had been traveling for days. But his eyes, those eyes, held a strength that made the air feel warmer. They held kindness, courage, and something unexplainable that seemed to shine brighter than the palace chandeliers. He did not bow low like the other nobles. He did not speak with fancy words. But the way he stood beside Lyra, protective and proud, made it clear. He belonged to her and she to him. The queen's brow furrowed. She had expected suitors from powerful kingdoms, men with titles, riches, and magic, men who could impress with words, charm, and strength. But this man, he was none of those things. He was a human, fragile by her standards, living in a world where royalty and magic meant everything. A simple human could not survive here. Not in court, not in politics, not even in the palace itself. Who's that? The queen's voice was soft but sharp, cutting through the quiet hall. Her gaze did not leave the man. She wanted to see if fear or arrogance would show on his face. Lyra smiled, her heart fluttering. She squeezed the man's hand gently and said, "The human I married." The words echoed in the grand hall, heavy and impossible to ignore. A human? Married to a princess? The queen's sharp eyes blinked once, twice. She could not hide her surprise. She had seen many suitors come and go, but none had dared to take her daughter's heart without ambition, without a title, without magic. And here he was, standing before her, ordinary in every way, yet holding Lyra's hand like he would never let go. The queen's silence felt longer than a heartbeat. She leaned back in her chair, studying him. "A human?" she repeated, her voice quiet this time, but layered with disbelief. "Do you understand what you are saying, Lyra?" "I do," Lyra said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I understand, Mother. I love him." "That is enough." Ethan the human looked at the queen with calm honesty. His voice was clear, respectful, and unwavering. "Your Majesty, I may not have magic or wealth or noble blood, but I will protect her. I will care for her. I will love her with everything I have. That is my promise." The queen's eyes narrowed slightly. She had ruled kingdoms, faced armies, and dealt with betrayal, but the honesty in this man's words, it unsettled her. He was ordinary yet fearless, human yet unbreakable. How could someone so simple hold the heart of her daughter, the princess, and not be afraid of the power that surrounded them? Lyra smiled again, her eyes soft and shining. She knew her mother doubted him, but she did not care. She had chosen him not because of his power, wealth, or status. She had chosen him because he saw her, truly saw her, not the crown she wore, not the duty she carried. He saw her heart. The queen's expression remained unreadable, but inside a small spark of curiosity ignited. Perhaps this human, so ordinary in the eyes of the world, held a strength she could not yet measure. And as the night settled around the palace, the princess and the human stood together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever judgment, trials, or dangers awaited them. They had each other, and sometimes that was stronger than any magic or crown. The next morning, the palace felt heavier. The grand halls, once alive with soft laughter and music, now echoed with whispers. Nobles glanced at Ethan with curiosity, some with suspicion, others with barely hidden amusement. The queen watched quietly from her chamber, her eyes sharp, her mind weighing every detail. She had accepted many suitors for her daughter before, but none like this. None who dared to claim the princess's heart without a crown, without magic, without influence. "Mother," Lyra said gently, appearing at the entrance of the chamber, "please do not judge him too soon. He is not like the others, but that does not make him less." The queen's gaze remained fixed on Ethan, who stood near the balcony, watching the sunrise. He seemed calm, even as eyes turned toward him, judging him silently. Less? The queen finally said, her voice firm but controlled. Lyra, he is mortal. He has no magic. He has no royal blood. He has nothing that can secure your future in this kingdom. Nothing that can protect you in the trials to come. Tell me, why him? What does he offer you that I cannot? Lyra stepped closer, her hand brushing Ethan's lightly. She could feel his steady pulse, his warm presence, and she knew more than anything that she had chosen correctly. Mother, she said softly, he offers what no magic or bloodline can give. He gives me honesty, courage. He gives me love that is real, not bound by duty or expectation. He sees me, not the crown I wear. The queen's lips pressed into a thin line. She studied Ethan closely. She had seen warriors and kings, men who had ruled nations with fire and magic. Yet here was someone ordinary, human, who stood firm before her, a human who dared to protect her daughter with nothing but his heart. And you? Are you prepared for this? She asked Ethan, her tone sharp. Do you understand what it means to marry into royalty? To face court politics, enemies, and dangers that you cannot even imagine? Ethan straightened, his gaze unwavering. He met the queen's eyes with a quiet strength. Your Majesty, I may be human, but I am not afraid to fight for her. I may not have magic or noble blood, but I have courage, loyalty, and love. I will protect her in ways no spell can. That is all I promise, and all she needs. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The queen could feel the weight of his words pressing against her pride. He was human, fragile in body, yet he had a strength she could not deny. A strength born from devotion, from the desire to protect someone he loved without question. She had never faced this before, never seen it in any noble, any king, or any prince. Lyra stepped closer to her mother, her voice firm but full of emotion. Mother, you taught me to be strong, to lead, to rule. But you also taught me to follow my heart. My heart chose him. Do not mistake his humanity for weakness. He is strong in ways that matter most. The queen's eyes softened slightly, though her pride remained. She had spent her life measuring power, ranking ability, and judging worth by titles and magic. And now she saw something she had never truly measured. The power of a human heart. Ethan's presence radiated a quiet, undeniable force, an unspoken promise to protect, to love, to stand by her daughter no matter what. She rose slowly from her chair, her gaze lingering on Ethan. He did not flinch. He did not bow. He simply stood there, calm, honest, unafraid. And for the first time, the queen felt a flicker of understanding, a small spark that perhaps courage, love, and loyalty mattered more than she had ever believed. Lyra smiled, squeezing Ethan's hand. She knew the queen's doubts would not vanish overnight, but for now they had spoken their truth. And in that truth she felt stronger than any princess, braver than any warrior, and happier than she had ever been. The queen's eyes followed them as they left the chamber, her mind quietly turning over the words, the promise, and the strength of the human who had captured her daughter's heart. She did not yet say it aloud, but something deep inside began to shift. Perhaps, just perhaps, humans were stronger than anyone had ever imagined. The palace felt alive with tension. The queen had not spoken much since the previous day, but her eyes followed Ethan wherever he went. She wanted to see if he would fail, if his humanity would falter in the face of royal life. She had arranged small tests, subtle challenges to observe him, tasks that many nobles had failed before. The first test came at breakfast. A noble had brought an intricate puzzle, one that required intelligence, patience, and knowledge of court traditions. Many of the queen's advisors whispered, expecting Ethan to struggle. But he did not panic. He studied the puzzle carefully, asking questions when needed, and solved it with a calm, steady mind. The room fell silent. Even the queen felt her heart skip a beat. He had no magic, no royal training, yet his determination and clarity shone brighter than many with power and titles. Later, the queen tested his character. She asked her advisors to speak harshly to him, to insult him subtly in front of the court. They hinted that he was unworthy, a mere human who could never meet a princess's needs. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not get angry. Instead, he looked at Lyra with warmth and said quietly, I may not be perfect, I may be simple, but I will never stop loving her, protecting her, and standing by her. That is my truth, and that is enough. Lyra felt tears prick her eyes. Every word, every gesture showed her that he was not just brave, He was extraordinary in his humility, in his strength of heart. The queen, watching from a distance, could not hide a flicker of surprise. He was human, yet stronger than anyone she had ever seen. The next day she tested him further. She presented a scenario where he would have to choose between comfort and responsibility, between self-preservation and helping another. She wanted to see if fear would break him as it had broken others. Ethan did not hesitate. He chose to help. He stayed awake through the night, assisting palace guards, comforting servants, and ensuring the safety of everyone in the palace. Even when exhaustion dragged at him, he did not falter. His loyalty was unwavering. The queen's eyes softened, but her pride still held firm. She had spent her life measuring worth by magic, strength, and bloodline. Humans, she had believed, were fleeting, weak, and fragile. But Ethan, he was human yet unshakable. He was fragile in body, but strong in heart, mind, and soul. Every action, every word, every gentle gesture he made toward Lyra proved that humanity had a power no magic could match. Then came the final test, or at least, what the queen intended to be final. She arranged a council meeting filled with influential nobles, each one's subtlety trying to embarrass Ethan, to expose him as unfit for a princess. They asked complicated questions about governance, strategy, and alliances. Many expected him to stumble, but Ethan answered each question with honesty and care. When he did not know something, he admitted it and promised to learn. When he faced tricky situations, he suggested solutions that were fair, wise, and thoughtful. The nobles whispered among themselves, unable to deny that, even without titles or magic, he held wisdom and insight they had not expected. Lyra's heart swelled with pride. The man she had chosen, simple, human, ordinary in many ways, was extraordinary in what truly mattered. Courage, honesty, loyalty, and love. The queen, standing silently at the edge of the chamber, felt a crack in her long-held beliefs. Perhaps humans were not weak. Perhaps they were stronger than anyone, even royalty, had imagined. That night, Lyra and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. The moonlight kissed the flowers and the air smelled of roses. Lyra took his hand and Ethan looked at her, exhausted but smiling. "You passed her tests," Lyra whispered. "I just did what I had to," Ethan replied softly, squeezing her hand. "For you." Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the quiet strength of a human heart that could stand against kingdoms, pride, and doubt. She knew, deep in her soul, that no matter what the future held, love and courage had already proven themselves stronger than any obstacle. And somewhere in the palace, the queen watched them from her window, her heart quietly turning, realizing that the man she had doubted might teach her the most important lesson of all, that true strength does not come from blood or magic. It comes from the heart. The palace had never been so still. The night sky was dark and a cold wind whispered through the corridors. Lyra was in her chambers reading by candlelight when a sudden alarm shattered the quiet. The sound of clashing metal, shouting soldiers, and distant screams echoed through the halls. The palace was under attack. Lyra's heart raced. She had been trained for emergencies, but the sight of soldiers storming the gate still filled her with fear. She ran to the balcony and saw chaos. Armies of a neighboring kingdom had arrived, seeking to claim her home. The queen hurried to the throne room, shouting orders to the guards, her magical powers flaring like lightning to repel the invaders. But it was Ethan who did not hesitate. Without waiting, he grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her to a hidden passage he had memorized while exploring the palace earlier. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice calm but urgent. His human strength and courage, ordinary by the world's measure, now shone brighter than any magic in the palace. The corridors shook with the sounds of battle. Soldiers fell, walls crumbled, and fire began to spread through the wooden structures. Ethan carried Lyra when the steps became too dangerous, shielding her body from falling debris with his own. Every time an enemy appeared, he faced them without fear, using quick thinking, strategy, and brute determination. Humans were fragile in body, yes, but their hearts could be unstoppable. At one point, an archer aimed directly at Lyra. Without a second thought, Ethan threw himself in front of her. The arrow grazed his shoulder, tearing his clothes and drawing blood. Lyra screamed, trying to pull him away, but he smiled through the pain. "I will not let anything happen to you," he said. His words were more powerful than any spell, stronger than any magical shield. The queen, witnessing the scene from the throne room, felt a shock that shook her pride. The human she had doubted, the one she thought too weak to survive, was standing in the face of danger, protecting her daughter with everything he had. Her heart, rigid for so long, softened a little. She had taught Lyra to be brave, to lead, to fight, but she had never expected that someone so ordinary could show such extraordinary courage. Flames filled the great hall, smoke curling into the air. Ethan navigated through the chaos, finding the safest paths, carrying those who were trapped, calming the frightened servants and soldiers. Lyra saw him lifting a fallen guard, giving water to a child, and standing unafraid before enemies 3 times his size. She could hardly believe it. He was a human, yet his heart and courage outshone everything she had ever seen in the palace. Finally, they reached the courtyard. Soldiers clashed in every direction. Ethan turned to Lyra, eyes full of determination. "Stay here," he said. "I will make sure the path is clear." Lyra wanted to protest, but she knew she could not stop him. She watched, her heart hammering as he fought with everything he had. Not magic, not swords, but pure human strength, bravery, and the love that drove him forward. The battle raged on. But slowly, the palace defenders began to gain ground, inspired by Ethan's fearlessness. The queen, finally moving forward, unleashed her full power, pushing back the enemy. And through it all, Ethan never faltered, never wavered, always returning to Lyra's side to make sure she was safe. When the last enemy was driven away and the palace was quiet again, Lyra ran to Ethan, embracing him tightly. He was battered, bruised, and bleeding, but he smiled, exhausted and proud. "I told you," he said softly. "I will always protect you." Lyra held him close, tears streaming down her face. She realized then more than ever that strength was not measured by magic, bloodline, or titles. It was measured by courage, love, and the will to stand by someone no matter the danger. Even the queen, watching from above, understood something new that night. Humans could be the most powerful beings of all. The palace had survived the attack, but the scars of the night were everywhere. Blackened walls, broken furniture, and the lingering smell of smoke reminded everyone of the chaos that had passed. Guards and servants moved carefully, repairing what they could, but the true test had already been written in the hearts of those who had witnessed it. The queen sat quietly in her chamber, her eyes fixed on Ethan as he moved through the hall, helping the servants clean and repair. His hands were scratched, his clothes torn, yet his calm determination never faltered. The human she had doubted, the one she had feared could not survive in her world, had faced death itself without hesitation, and he had done it not for glory, not for power, but for Lyra. Lyra approached him, her face still streaked with tears from the night's terror. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled, tired but steady. "I am, as long as you are safe," he replied. His voice carried a quiet strength, a warmth that seemed to reach even the queen, hidden in the shadows of the hall. The queen rose from her chair and stepped forward, her long robes brushing the floor. She had watched him closely, but tonight she would speak her mind openly. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but filled with gravity, "I watched you last night. You risked everything for my daughter. You carried her, protected her, and faced enemies who underestimated you at every step. And you did it with nothing but your human heart." Ethan bowed slightly, showing respect but not submission. "Your Majesty, I did what I promised. She is my world. Her life, her safety, her happiness, they matter more than my own." The queen's eyes softened, a flicker of pride and understanding breaking through the layers of her lifelong caution. She had always valued power, skill, and lineage above all else. But in Ethan she saw a different kind of strength, one that could not be measured by magic or bloodline. It was courage born of love, patience, and loyalty, a strength that could move mountains, withstand storms, and protect those it cherished. "You are human," the queen said quietly, "and yet I have never seen such bravery, such heart. Perhaps I judged you too quickly." She paused, studying him carefully. "You are not what I expected, yet somehow, you are exactly what Lyra needs." Lyra smiled, her heart swelling with love and relief. She had always known Ethan's worth, but hearing it acknowledged by her mother, the queen, made her feel as though the world itself had shifted in her favor. She reached out and took Ethan's hand, holding it firmly. "Mother," she said, her voice full of emotion, "he is not just my husband. He is my protector, my friend, my family. He has proven his strength in ways no one else could." The queen nodded slowly, her pride still present but now tempered by understanding. "Yes, Lyra, I see it now. Strength is not only in magic or blood. It is in courage, in loyalty, and love that does not falter even in the face of danger. You have chosen wisely, my daughter. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a feeling he had never expected. Acceptance from the Queen, someone so powerful and proud, meant more than any title or reward. He had proven that humanity, even when fragile in body, could shine brighter than the strongest magic, and that truth had finally reached the Queen's heart. The three of them stood together in the hall, surrounded by the remnants of destruction, yet filled with a sense of new beginnings. The Queen's eyes softened as she looked at Ethan, seeing him not as a mere human, but as a man who carried bravery and love like armor, stronger than any spell or sword. Lyra squeezed Ethan's hand, her heart full. "Thank you," she whispered to her mother, for seeing him. The Queen's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. "He is worthy," she said quietly. "And so are you, Lyra, for recognizing true strength when it stands before you." In that moment, the palace felt lighter. Fear had been replaced with respect, doubt with understanding, and somewhere deep within, the Queen realized that love and courage, qualities Ethan possessed in abundance, were the greatest forces in the world. Stronger than magic, titles, or lineage. The palace had begun to recover. The broken walls were repaired, the scorched halls polished and shining once more. Life slowly returned to its rhythm. But the story of the human who had risked everything for Princess Lyra had already spread through every corner. Whispers of awe, curiosity, and admiration followed Ethan wherever he went. The nobles who had doubted him now watched carefully, some with suspicion, some with quiet respect. Lyra walked beside him in the great hall, her hand in his. She felt a surge of pride each time she saw him speak to the servants, guide the guards, or comfort the frightened children who had been caught in the chaos of the attack. He did not rule with fear nor with power or magic. He led with honesty, courage, and love, the kind of strength that made people naturally follow him. The Queen observed quietly from her chair, her eyes soft but thoughtful. She had once doubted him, questioned his worth, and worried for her daughter. But now she saw the truth. Ethan was human, yes, but humanity itself could be stronger than kingdoms. It could be braver than armies, kinder than the richest treasures, and more enduring than the strongest magic. The preparations for the formal union began. Lyra had chosen a simple ceremony, not grandiose like the royal weddings of the past, but full of meaning. The courtyard was decorated with flowers that glowed under the warm afternoon sun. The guards and servants were invited alongside the nobles. Ethan stood beside Lyra, his simple attire clean and neat, his eyes filled with love and quiet pride. He did not need jewels or titles to shine. His heart was already radiant. As the ceremony began, Lyra stepped forward, her dress flowing like a river of silver. She looked at Ethan, seeing the man who had risked his life for her, who had proven that courage and love were stronger than any crown. "Do you, Ethan," she said, her voice soft but clear, "promise to stand by me, protect me, and love me in all circumstances for as long as you live?" Ethan took her hands in his, looking into her eyes. "I do," he said simply. "I promise to protect you, to love you, and to stand by you, always." No magic, no title, no power can change that truth. The Queen watched closely, her heart swelling with emotions she could not fully name. She had feared this human would fail, that he could not survive the weight of royalty. But now, she saw the man who had faced fire, danger, and doubt, and emerged stronger than any noble she had known. Lyra and Ethan exchanged their vows in simple words, filled with meaning. There was no pomp, no grand speeches, only honesty, courage, and the love that had grown through trials and fire. When they sealed their vows with a gentle kiss, the crowd erupted, not just in celebration of a princess's marriage, but in awe of the human who had redefined strength. After the ceremony, the Queen approached Ethan. She looked at him with a mixture of pride, respect, and understanding. "You have proven yourself worthy," she said softly. "Not because of magic or bloodline, but because of your heart. You are more than I ever expected, Ethan. You are extraordinary." Ethan bowed slightly, gratitude in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only did what anyone who loves her would do." Lyra hugged both of them, feeling a warmth that filled the palace itself. "Mother," she said, "he is my husband, my partner, my heart, and I am proud to stand with him." The Queen smiled, a rare and genuine expression. She had learned something that day that no royal lesson could teach. that true strength is not measured by magic, title, or wealth, but by courage, loyalty, and love. And as the sun set over the palace, painting the sky with gold and pink, the halls were filled not only with music and laughter, but with a quiet truth. Humans, ordinary in body, could achieve greatness beyond imagination, simply by standing for what they loved. Lyra and Ethan walked hand in hand through the palace gardens, their hearts intertwined, ready to face a future where love and humanity would shine brighter than any crown. Years passed, and the palace had changed. The halls were no longer silent or tense. They were alive with laughter, stories, and the quiet hum of daily life. Lyra and Ethan had settled into a rhythm of partnership, ruling not just with authority but with wisdom, care, and heart. Their love, tested by fire and danger, had only grown stronger. Ethan had become more than just a human in the palace. He had become a symbol. People whispered his name with respect, for he had proven that courage and love could surpass titles, bloodlines, and magic. Nobles who once doubted him now sought his counsel. Guards who had laughed at his arrival now followed him loyally. Even the queen, who had once questioned his worth, now stood proudly by his side, recognizing the strength that came not from birthright, but from the heart. Lyra often watched Ethan quietly, marveling at the man she had chosen. He did not need grandeur to command attention. He did not wield magic, yet his presence inspired trust. He did not rule by fear, yet his decisions carried weight beyond measure. In his eyes she saw courage that never wavered, kindness that never faded, and a love that made her feel truly seen for the first time in her life. One afternoon the queen approached them in the courtyard. She had grown older, her hair streaked with silver, but her gaze was steady and proud. "Lyra," she said, her voice warm, "do you remember the day you first told me who he was?" Lyra smiled, squeezing Ethan's hand. "I do. It was the day my life changed forever." The queen looked at Ethan, her eyes reflecting admiration and a touch of humility. "You are human," she said softly, "and yet you have shown what no magic or bloodline ever could. You are brave, loyal, and true. You have taught me, and all of us, that strength comes from the heart. The human I once doubted has become one of the strongest I have ever known." Ethan bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, I only did what love required of me. For Lyra, I would do it all again, and again, and again." Lyra laughed softly, leaning on his shoulder. "And I would follow you anywhere. You have taught me that love can be stronger than fear, braver than magic, and more enduring than power." Together they walked through the palace gardens, the sun casting long golden shadows across the flowers. Children ran past them laughing, some carrying small wooden swords, pretending to be brave humans just like Ethan. The palace staff moved with ease, the halls alive with music and stories. The legacy of that night of fire and chaos had become a story of hope, courage, and humanity. As years turned into decades, Lyra and Ethan's story spread beyond the palace walls, across kingdoms and villages. People spoke of the princess who married a human, not for wealth, not for power, not for status, but for love, courage, and heart. Humans were no longer seen as weak or limited. They were admired, respected, and celebrated for the strength they carried within themselves. And every time a visitor asked the queen, "Who is he?" she would smile, a quiet pride in her eyes, and say the words that had changed the hearts of many. "The human I married." It was more than an answer. It was a truth. A truth that reminded everyone who heard it that humanity, in its simplest and purest form, could rise above fear, prejudice, and expectation. That ordinary hearts, when fueled by love and courage, could achieve the extraordinary. Lyra and Ethan stood together, hand in hand, watching the sunset paint the sky with gold and crimson. They had faced doubt, danger, and prejudice, yet they had emerged victorious, not because of magic or titles, but because of the unbreakable bond of human courage and love. And in that bond, they left a legacy that would be remembered for generations, that even in a world of kings, queens, and magic, humanity, ordinary, honest, brave humanity was the greatest power of all.